Hello, 8th grade. This is your May 4th assignment for English Language Arts. So you will go into your Google Classroom, go to the Classwork tab, scroll down to the ELA topic, and find your assignment that says May 4th ELA assignment. And on that morning, may the 4th be with you. Sorry, I can't resist. So we are continuing to examine whether we can create a perfect society, and if so, who gets to decide what the meaning of perfect is, and what do we do with those that we deem imperfect. So this week we will read a poem called Then They Came. The instructions for reading are in your Google Classroom assignment, and as always, they are in English and Spanish. So first you'll open the PowerPoint presentation and read the poem, and then you will complete the Google form. And your learning objectives are listed here, but they're also in the PowerPoint presentation. So first you're going to open this, First They Came, and then you're going to fill out the Google Forms. I'm going to go through it with you very quickly. Click on this First They Came. I have it open already. It'll look like this. So your essential question is on the title slide. Who decides who is perfect, and what do we do with those that are deemed imperfect? And this is your assignment beginning May 4th. Your objectives for this week, it looks like a lot, but they're very, very interconnected, and you have a whole week to get through them. We always go through vocabulary, so you'll be reinforcing vocabulary that you already learned, and hopefully learning a couple of new words this week as well. You'll be adjusting your fluency, like your reading rate, depending on your purpose, and also the genre. So 2 weeks ago, we read a fictional story. When you read a fictional story, you usually can get through it a little quickly because it's usually relatable and you can understand it pretty easily. Then last week, we did an autobiography. We read that one a little more slowly because there were some concepts in it that were really difficult, emotional, and things that we weren't really that familiar with. And now this week we're reading a poem. So we're going to adjust our reading rate to a little bit more slowly so we can understand it and probably read it multiple times. And we have the purpose of being able to understand the poem and answer questions about it. So we will read it a little more slowly. And you're establishing purpose for reading. We already have our essential question, which connects to the last few weeks of our studies. And the creating mental images, I'm hoping that we do that every single time we read anything. You need to visualize what you're reading every single time you read. Making connections, that is so important. We talked about that before as well. If you don't make a connection to what you've learned that day, you will not remember it. At night, your brain makes the decision, your hypothalamus makes the decision whether or not to discard the things that you learned or store them away in long-term memory. If you have no connection to those things that you learned that day, you will not store it in your long-term memory. So that works for any subject: English, science, math, social studies. So always try to make a connection with your material whenever you can. And that's going to help you also interact with the material in a meaningful way. And we will also write about the explicit, which means literal, or implicit, which means implied, or what we think the author means. We're going to analyze the use of literary devices. We will describe how the author uses figurative language to achieve his purpose. And then we will compose a poem. 1. Our agenda for this slideshow is to go over the objectives, go over the agenda, do some background, a mini lesson on the author of the poem, read the poem, analyze the poem, and then write your own poem, or as an alternate assignment, we will answer questions about the poem. Background for the author. So we're continuing to work on the idea that people believe there's a perfect society, that there is a perfect society, and whether we agree that that's possible. And I've had feedback from many of you about your thoughts on that, and I appreciate what you've said. And I've given you individual feedback, but we continue to work on this. And this man, the man that wrote the poem, is Pastor Martin Niemöller. And he was a complicated man. He was born in Germany. He was the son of a priest. He served in the German Navy during World War I. He actually was the captain of a U-boat. He became a pastor after World War I, and he saw that his country was in a deep economic crisis. He supported the beliefs of a rising popular political figure, Adolf Hitler, and he blamed Jewish people for their problems, for their economic problems. He called Jewish people Christ killers. So when Martin, during World War II and immediately after World War I, Martin was a fan of Adolf Hitler. However, after a few years during World War II, Niemöller met Hitler in person. He began to realize that Hitler was a dictator. And then when Hitler took over the Protestant church and changed the text of the Bible, Niemöller became critical of the charismatic leader. What happens when you criticize an insane man who thinks of himself above all others? You go to jail. You go to jail with the Jews, the political dissidents, which you now are, the poor, the handicapped, the people of a different color. The list goes on. So when he decided that Hitler was not a good person and he spoke out against him, Hitler put him in jail. He was actually sent to the Dachau concentration camp, which was the worst. It was actually the first concentration camp. It was the model for all other concentration camps to follow, to implement the systematic murder for the Nazi Party. The horrors of the camp cannot be described in words. People were poisoned, experimented on while alive with no medication, starved, beaten, and worse. I know the picture in the corner is kind of graphic. That was one of the prisoners. An American soldier took that picture when they freed Dachau. Niemöller changed his opinion of what Hitler was doing while being imprisoned. Niemöller's poem, First They Came, shortly after he was liberated by the Americans from his concentration camp. After the war, he was one of the few to speak out quickly and say that the German people should accept responsibility for the murders of 6 million Jewish people during the Holocaust. However, he did not publicly apologize for his anti-Semitism, his belief that Jews were lesser people is anti-Semitism. He did not apologize for that until 1963 in a German radio interview. So it took him decades to apologize for calling them names and not standing up for them. So this poem that we're about to read has people across the world to speak up for others when they face discrimination. But his own history is complicated. His story is a reminder that people don't always fall into a category of good or evil. We must learn from his experiences to understand how people allowed the Holocaust to happen. Now, I have a video. I'm going to pause this video for a second and see if I can turn the volume up. So this video is going to read to you the poem listed here. Move my mouse.
First I came for the communists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me.
Okay, if you could pause this presentation and think about what the poem means, if you could reread it. You might notice that when she read the poem, she said, in this area, she said socialist. The poem has several different versions. Martin Niemöller said different things to different groups of people. I thought it was important for you to know that he did say this as well as socialist. So pause the video at this time and think about what this means, and please reread it. What pattern did you notice in the poem? And what does that pattern have? What kind of impact does that pattern have on you as the reader? Did you notice any repetition? That's a literary device used in poetry to give emphasis to something. In this case, the repetition of first they came is telling us about, don't play please, telling us about different groups of people. I did not speak out because. It's telling us about the indifference or the complacency that he had. Do we know what indifference is? It's when you don't care or you don't notice that something is happening around you. And remember, complacency, we learned it during the article for flattening the curve. It means when people have a false sense of security. So we learned it several weeks ago when we read the coronavirus article. And then last week we talked about it when the Jews were told that Nazis were going to take them to concentration camps, and they just didn't do anything. They were complacent. They thought it couldn't happen to them. They didn't believe that it could happen. So what do you think the theme of this poem is? What do you think the author regrets? What kind of lesson is he asking you to have? What's his lesson? Why is he playing you? So the theme there could be multiple themes. It could be humanity, because he does talk about multiple groups of humans. And in the end, we're all the same. We live and breathe and die. Could be about indifference, how he was complacent when systematically, group by group, people were taken away. What other themes can you think of? Responsibility. Do you think he thinks it was his responsibility to speak up for people who could not? What do you think he regrets? Do you think he regrets not speaking up? What is he asking you to do? So your assignment is to write your own poem about standing up for others, or, so you have two choices. You can write a poem, or you can answer questions about the poem. All of that is on the same Google I'm going to show you right now. We're going to exit this program. Oh, I am going to say one more thing, maybe. So you look at your slides first, or this video, and then you go to this Google Forms. That's two parts to this. Each one has 100 points. You go to the Google Forms, which looks like this, and you'll answer option 1, which is you can answer the questions, or answer option 2, which is writing a poem. You do not have to do both. You can do both for extra credit, but you do not have to. So if you decide you want to do option 1, you click on option 1, and you go through all the questions and answer them. When you hit next, it's going to ask you to submit the form. If you hit option 2, going back. So if you hit option 2, super fantastic technology is supposed to pop you into the next section. It's acting super glitchy. So if you click on option 2, you don't have to answer the questions unless you want to, but you can just click next at the bottom of this page. So go down to the bottom of the page, hit next. And you can write a poem. There's a rubric, so we know you know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a clear theme that's related to the poem that you read already. And then you just hit submit once you put your poem in this area right here. Make sure you wrote that you turned it in your Google Classroom. Can't speak well. And if you have any questions, please contact me. Mondays at 9 are my live office hours. I will hold that. I do apologize. I had some internet. We had a power outage and my internet was not working, but I didn't realize it. So I thought you guys didn't come into the meeting, but apparently I wasn't even online during that time. So I apologize to you for that if you tried to come in, but please come in this Monday. My internet seems to be working. Always email me if you have a question, and I will try to answer you as quickly as possible. Stay safe, wear your mask, and do your homework.